Landon and I had been in a secret relationship for 6 years. We were finally ready to go public. I was thrilled, planning a small surprise family gathering. But as I stepped outside, I overheard voices from next door. Someone joked about Landon's first love returning and what he would do with Lee, the stand-in sister. The conversation turned awkward when Landon stayed silent. Another voice praised Landon for his charm and how even the Norris family hairs fell for him. They speculated about my return and whether Landon would regret not committing to me sooner. The next day, as predicted, Landon took me to Kayla's birthday party, where he acted lovingly and played the role of the perfect boyfriend. However, when Kayla started crying and ran out, he hesitated and remained stunned. Ed grabbed my arm and hurried off after her without hesitation. With wine stains and bruises dotting my body, I trudged back home. Consumed by the sudden urge, I ventured into the attic that had always been locked, a place reserved for his solitude. What I stumbled upon sent chills down my spine. The entire wall was adorned with photos of him and Kayla, snapshots of their shared moments and happiness. My heart stood still. Without a second thought, I dialed my brother, who resided overseas. "Brother," I murmured, "regarding the engagement, I have made my decision. I am in agreement." A moment of silence followed, and my brother's concerned voice echoed through the phone. "Stella, is everything all right? Did something happen?" His familiar worry tugged at my heartstrings, threatening tears. I mustered a laugh. "Oh, nothing really. It's just that even the neighbor's dog has had puppies twice, and here I am, still single. It's becoming quite the joke." His laughter filled the line, easing the tension. "That's the spirit." Suddenly, he paused. "Wait a minute, isn't your neighbor Landon? He's been afraid of dogs since he was a child. Why is he raising his voice at me?" Caught off guard, I didn't expect him to remember that. Luckily, he didn't push me further. He changed the topic. "So when will you be returning? Why not meet the guy before deciding?" I replied promptly, "No need. If you and Dad give the green light, I have faith in your choice. Go ahead with the wedding plans. I'll wrap things up here and come back soon." "Okay," he hesitated, then asked, "Should we invite Landon to the wedding?" I heard his old flame is back in town. Perhaps he's next to tie the knot. It seemed everyone knew about his feelings for her. Everyone except me. I bowed my head, fighting back tears. "No, we had a falling out," I explained. "What happened? It was because of their dog," I clarified. Just then, I heard footsteps approaching the door. I quickly ended the call. Looking up, I locked eyes with Landon, who appeared amused. "What's this about a dog?" he inquired. "Who are you talking to?" "My brother," I responded calmly. "We were discussing your dog." He furrowed his brow as he stated, "I don't have a dog." A moment later, his expression softened as he grasped my implication. Instead of becoming upset, he chuckled and playfully tackled me, gently pushing me onto the sofa. "Oh, so I'm the dog now, huh? And what does that make you, my little one?" I attempted to push him away, but he took hold of my hand and placed it on his waist. "Is this what you're into? That strong dog-like physique?" Leaning in close, his breath caressed my face, his lips almost touching mine. What used to excite me now only filled me with discomfort and revulsion. As I struggled, his shirt collar shifted, revealing fresh bite marks on his collarbone. My leg grazed the table, causing a sharp throb from the injury sustained the previous night. The pain was so intense that tears welled up and streamed down my cheeks. The moment Landon noticed my tears, his demeanor changed. "Stella, what's wrong? Did I hurt you?" Alarmed, he quickly sat me up and scanned me for injuries. His voice shook as he observed the bloody scratches on my calf. Once again, I wondered how this had occurred. Why had he not informed me? Why had he not reached out to me? It was as if he had completely forgotten the events of the previous night's party, as if Kayla's birthday and his actions had disappeared from his memory. I sat in silence, unsure if I should speak up, unsure if I should peel back the facade of tenderness he displayed so convincingly. Landon tenderly kissed my forehead and reassured me with a soothing voice, "There's no need for tears. Let me treat that wound." As he got up to retrieve the first aid kit, he continued to talk as if everything was normal. "You really don't know how to look after yourself, do you? What would you do without me?" I gazed at his back, unmoving. "Yes, what would I do without him? For 22 years, I had pursued him, and for 6 of those, we had been inseparable." "But Landon, what I desired was not the facade you offered. I craved the real you, not this meticulously crafted fantasy." That night, sleep eluded me as I was awoken by a nightmare in the dead of night. I slipped out of his embrace and settled barefoot on the window seat, gazing up at the moon. Unbeknownst to me, I must have drifted into slumber, only to be abruptly awakened as Landon tenderly carried me in his arms. With a half-exasperated, half-amused smile, he questioned me. "Why are you asleep here, without clothes and not in bed? What am I to do with you?" His expression then turned serious, noticing the heat radiating from my body. My head felt heavy, as if filled with damp cotton, making it difficult to respond. Sensing my discomfort, Landon gently pressed his cool palm against my forehead before wrapping me in a blanket and swiftly changing our attire. Returning with my clothes, he began dressing me despite my feeble attempts to resist. "I can manage," I weakly protested, struggling to form words. However, Landon dismissed my efforts, stating, "How many times have I dressed you? Now you're shy because you're unwell?" Grinning me, he carried me down to the car. As we waited in line at the hospital registration desk, a familiar voice broke the quiet. "Landon, it was Kayla," eyes red, walking in from outside. Their eyes met, and for a moment, no words came. Landon's expression shifted. He immediately left the line, rushing over to support her shoulders with concern. "What happened? Are you hurt?" She sniffled and said, I I was just trying to cook some porridge and burned myself. I am such a klutz." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a red swollen patch on her arm. Landon's eyes instantly turned glassy. He lifted her arm and blew gently on the burn, his touch full of care. "Do not do these things anymore. Just tell me what you want to eat. I will make sure you get it." Kayla nodded, her tears giving way to a smile. "No one treats me as kindly as you do, Landon." He reached out and tousled her hair. "Silly girl, if I do not take care of you, then who will?" She beamed at him, sweet and charming, her eyes casually drifting past to the long bench. Here I sat, pale and forgotten. Landon did not even glance at me. He queued up again for her, talked gently to her, asked if she was cold, if she needed anything, and then he left with her, never once looking back at me. That was the difference between a placeholder and the one who held his heart. No matter how convincing his performance, no matter how tender his touch, once Kayla appeared, I ceased to exist. I gave a bitter smile and forced myself to stand. My legs wobbled, but I made my way to the desk and registered myself. Then I walked slowly, carefully to the appropriate department. The fever was bad. I needed and to bring it down alone. I waited in line for my medication, then dragged myself to the infusion area. I do not know when I fell asleep, but I was jolted awake by a small hand shaking my shoulder. A little boy stood beside me and asked me this, "Where is your boyfriend? You fell asleep and your blood started backing up. My mom called the nurse for you, but we are going home now and you shouldn't." Being alone in this situation is risky. I gazed at him with gratitude, thanking both him and his mother. I then made an effort to straighten up and focus on the 4 bags hovering above me. By the time the treatment concluded, it was late afternoon. To my dismay, Landon hadn't reached out even once. Attempting to leave the hospital on my own, I was suddenly overcome by dizziness and had to retreat back to the bench. Resigned, I dialed his number. After informing him of my continued presence at the hospital, there was a prolonged silence before he spoke up. "Sorry, Stella." His voice faltered. Kayla was in too much pain to withstand the hospital's disinfectant smell, so I took her home first. I was coming back to you right after. Before he could finish, Kayla's lighthearted voice interrupted from the background. "Landon, are you finished yet? I'm starving." Despite Landon's quick attempt to muffle the receiver, his reassurances rang hollow in my ears. "Stella, it's not what you think. Just go home for now. I'll return later." I curled my lips into a fake smile. Honestly, I had no desire to hear any more of his so-called explanations. I already knew what they meant, just another round of lies wrapped in new excuses. So I said calmly, "It's all right, Landon. I can handle things on my own. In this world, no one is so essential that you cannot live without them, especially not Landon." I hung up and ordered a delivery service to pick up my things. I returned home without drama, without tears that night. As expected, Landon never came back. Later, deep into the night, while I was working on an urgent file for my boss, my phone lit up. It was a notification. Landon had forwarded one of Kayla's social media posts. The image showed two shadows leaning into one another affectionately, captioned with sentimental words. "Who says no one waits for you in the same place? The one who truly cares will be there, no matter how far you stray. Just turn around." They never left. Shortly before the post disappeared, swiftly deleted, another message emerged, this time from his alternative account. He had reposted the same content, clearly attempting to conceal it from my main account. Unbeknownst to him, I still followed him on the secondary account. Suppressing a chuckle, I quietly unfollowed both accounts that night. Alone without Landon by my side, I experienced a better night's sleep than I had in weeks. The following morning, I woke feeling refreshed and clear-headed. Arriving promptly at the office, I handed in my resignation letter to my supervisor. Though reluctant to see me go upon learning I was departing to prepare for marriage, she sighed and embraced me warmly, extending her best wishes. After the necessary paperwork was completed, my coworkers, previously despondent to see me leave, suddenly shifted their attitude upon discovering the reason for my departure. They insisted on a farewell dinner, to which I happily agreed. I organized an evening of food and karaoke to bid adieu to my colleagues. It seemed as though fate had a peculiar sense of humor. Halfway through the night, as I made my way to the restroom, I unexpectedly bumped into Kayla. She appeared calm and composed, contrasting with my own awkwardness. With a soft smile, she greeted me. "What a coincidence to see you here, Stella." I responded with a polite nod and a faint smile, my mind not set on engaging in casual conversation. As I turned to head back to my private room, she subtly moved in my path, preventing me from leaving. "Stella, do you have an issue with me?" she inquired, tone still pleasant. "I'm curious as to why. We have more in common than you think. We both enjoy beef with vinegar, for instance." At her words, I felt a sudden stillness wash over me. I had always wondered why Landon would add vinegar to my beef before serving it to me, insisting it enhanced the flavor. I had never cared for it, but I never questioned him too deeply. Now everything makes sense. It wasn't about me. It was a habit rooted in their shared past. A wave of nausea overcame me as the realization sank in. Kayla, however, wasn't finished. And Stella, continuing in a somewhat sweet tone, I asked if she thought we looked similar. That one remark shattered everything I had been trying to maintain. My composure, my dignity, it all crumbled in that instant. Putting on a forced smile, I replied, "Is that right? What a peculiar coincidence. I must be on my way, excuse me." I swiftly passed by her and walked away, my steps hurried and unsteady. As I returned to the room, a chill ran through me. Pouring myself a strong drink, I sought warmth for my cold limbs. My colleagues in high spirits urged me to sing a song. However, as I browsed the playlist, the door suddenly flew open with a resounding bang. Landon appeared in the doorway, his eyes sweeping the room before locking onto me with fury. With anger blazing in his narrowed eyes, he strode towards me and harshly grasped my neck. "Who is that man you were with?" he demanded, his voice trembling with rage. I had never seen him like this before. More wild, violent, and frightening. A sudden surge of terror gripped my heart. "What?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. "What are you even saying?" Landon's eyes blazed with an unsettling intensity, his whole being vibrating with anger. Despite the efforts of several coworkers trying to restrain him, he remained immovable, his grip unyielding. His voice seethed with wrath. "The man you viciously dragged into the restroom to harm Kayla. Who was he?" Gasping for breath, I struggled for composure and lashed out, delivering a resounding slap across Landon's face. The impact stunned him momentarily, causing his hold to loosen, but his rage only intensified. Shielded by concerned colleagues, I collapsed onto a nearby sofa, choking and wheezing, fighting to inhale. It took precious moments before I could articulate again. "Landon, what on earth are you accusing me of? Why would I take a man into a restroom and harm Kayla?" His voice cracked with disbelief and resentment. "If it wasn't you, then who?" "Left behind at the hospital to be taken care of by you. You're upset. With me not coming home for days, is this your way of getting back at me, Lillian? You truly are cruel." A sharp pain twisted in my chest. I released a bitter laugh and nodded slowly. "If you are so certain it was me, why not involve the police?" Landon pressed his lips together, his silence speaking volumes. The disappointment in his eyes pierced me like icy needles. Finally, he spoke again. "You believe I would never report you, which is why you feel at liberty to act as you please, is that it?" I locked eyes with him, a storm of fury and contempt rising within me. He had just attempted to choke me. What limits remained that he would not cross? Suddenly, he grabbed my wrist and ushered me out of the private room. My colleagues tried to intervene. I shook my head at them with a weak smile, grateful for their concern. "I apologize," I told them. "This is a personal matter. Please don't let it rule your night. I will return shortly." Only then, they stepped aside and Landon dragged me into another private room. Inside, Kayla sat trembling on the sofa, wrapped in Landon's jacket. A few of his close friends stood around her, comforting her with quiet words. Landon shoved me forward until I was standing right in front of her. His voice was sharp and commanding. Apologized to Kayla. You should be thankful she was not hurt any worse tonight. If she had been, I would have made sure you pay for it. My knee slammed against the hard edge of the sofa, sending a jolt of pain through my leg. I inhaled sharply. Kayla looked up with teary eyes, shaking her head. Landon, please, she said in a soft, trembling voice. This is not Stella's fault. Maybe I just had bad luck tonight. Then she lowered her head and sobbed, her cry soft and pitiful like a wounded kitten. It made her seem helpless, innocent. But what exactly had I done wrong? A quiet laugh escaped my lips as I stood upright again. I am really curious, Landon, I said. There is an old saying, you accuse someone of theft. I refuse to play along with your baseless accusations. If you come after me again, I will involve the police. Despite our 22-year history, Landon's bias and favoritism towards Kayla were clear for all to see. Feeling like a mere stand-in, I decided to leave the party early. I settled the bill and bid farewell to my colleagues in the office chat. Back at home, I felt completely drained. My thoughts wandered to a night 6 years ago when I had kindly offered Landon a place to stay while he was drunk. Sitting across from him on the couch, I couldn't help but notice his features, his tousled hair, his peaceful breathing. I observed him until his eyes suddenly snapped open. His gaze held a captivating intensity, drawing me in like a blazing fire. Do you like me? He inquired. Without hesitation, I found myself nodding in response. A mischievous smirk played on his lips before he reached out, pulling me closer, grasping the back of my head as he kissed me fiercely and eagerly. That night marked the beginning of our relationship, at least in name. I had heard about Kayla before, but our paths had never crossed. During their time together, I was immersed in final year coursework, consumed by research papers and looming thesis deadlines. By the time I resurfaced, her love story had already taken a tragic turn. I had believed I was helping to mend his heart's wounds, perhaps being the remedy he sought. However, reflecting on those 6 years now, I realized the sheer absurdity of it all. The following morning, I arranged for a housekeeping service to assist with packing and organizing. Landon didn't have many possessions of his own, as he lived nearby. Despite never fully moving in after we began living together, he brought over only his. Everyday essentials. As the time came to retrieve his belongings, they all neatly fit into a small cardboard box. I entered his apartment, collected all the photos of us, every gift and trinket I had given him, and reclaimed them all. I carefully placed his keys on the table. My belongings, along with some old items from the apartment, were packed up and sent overseas. Upon finishing, and as the real estate agent arrived to inspect the apartment, I remembered that one spare key was still with Landon. I tried calling him repeatedly, but he kept hanging up without answering. Eventually, he sent a text message stating that he did not want to hear from me unless I was ready to apologize and reflect. I was left stunned as I stared at my phone screen. Without hesitation, I decided to call a locksmith to change the locks. The next morning, I handed over the new keys and boarded a plane with my suitcase, without looking back at the place that had once held so much emotional significance to me. Excitedly fastened, the sensation of departure was surprisingly effortless. Moments before the flight, my phone vibrated with an influx of messages. Birthday greetings flooded in from numerous friends, brimming with warmth and well wishes. Each message conveyed heartfelt sentiments of endless happiness, peace, and a bright future, encouraging me to find love in every corner of my life. I replied to each message individually before switching off my phone. As the aircraft descended into the skies, I sat contemplatively by the window, grateful for the outpouring of blessings. Touching down in London under the radiance of a stunning evening, the city's lights glistened like precious gems in the night sky. Stemming my suitcase along, I exited the terminal and was immediately greeted by my eagerly waiting parents and brother, their eyes filled with joy. A rush of emotions overwhelmed me as my brother instinctively grabbed my luggage, and I sought solace in my mother's warm embrace. Reuniting with my family, enveloped in their love and presence, felt surreal and brought tears to my eyes. Finally home, she whispered softly, giving me a gentle pat on the back. I missed you more than words can express. Her loving voice only deepened the guilt I felt inside. 9 years ago, I had made the choice to stay in the city for college, chasing after a vague dream of love. Despite their pleas, I was convinced that my heart knew best, and I turned a deaf ear to their concerns. They never pushed me, but simply let me go. That farewell had now stretched into nearly a decade of separation. During that time, we had only managed brief reunions during the holiday season. The realization of how they must have longed for me during those 9 years made me feel incredibly selfish. Mom, I spoke quietly, I'm not leaving again. From now on, I'll stay here with you and Dad. My parents exchanged smiles and my mother spoke. That's all we've ever wanted, to have our family together again, full of laughter and light hearts. I linked arms with my father and held my mother's hand as we left the airport, the feeling of home settling comfortably around us. However, as I returned to Landon's apartment back in Deep Cove, a different narrative was unfolding. He sat on the floor, visibly overwhelmed and shaken, repeatedly dialing my number. Each year on my birthday, without fail, Landon custom ordered a bracelet for me from a boutique called Stars. This yearly tradition continued. This year was no exception. However, when Landon received the reminder to pick up the bracelet, he suddenly realized it was my birthday. Glancing at his phone, he was startled by a sudden realization. He hadn't heard from me at all, not even on this important day. A sense of emptiness washed over him as he felt that something significant had quietly slipped away from his life. After a brief moment of contemplation, he sent a message. Since it's your birthday, I'll let it slide. Just apologize to Kayla, and we can move forward. To his surprise, instead of a red receipt, a red exclamation mark appeared on the screen. Then, a notification popped up that made him freeze. You are not friends with the recipient. Please send a friend request to connect. Landon's hands trembled as he read those words, his face reddening with anger. He tried calling me, but my phone was turned off. Despite his multiple attempts, he couldn't reach me, becoming increasingly frustrated. With each unanswered call, his growing panic clawed at his chest until it became unbearable. Disregarding Kayla's protests, he rushed into his car and sped home. Upon arriving at my door, he was surprised to find that the key he held no longer worked. Puzzled and frustrated, he couldn't understand why I was so angry. Despite his repeated attempts to get my attention by pounding on the door, it was a newlywed couple who eventually opened it, looking at him with confusion. Defeated, he returned home only to be met with another shock. Every trace of me was gone. The mugs, the shared house slippers, and the sentimental trinkets I had given him over the years had all disappeared without a trace. He stood in his empty home, filled with regret, wishing he had cherished those small things more. He stored them away like memories he could hold on to. Kayla soon arrived and tried to comfort him. Maybe Stella just needed to get away for a bit. She is probably out to clear her head. Once she calms down, she will come back. But Landon shook his head miserably. You not know her. Stella is not someone who acts without thinking. As he finished the sentence, he paused, a sudden thought flashing through his mind. The memory of that night at the karaoke bar. His eyes darkened as he turned to Kayla, suspicion sharp in his gaze. That night at the KTV. Are you sure it was the man Stella brought who tried to assault you? Kayla flinched. I never said Stella brought him. I just said she left. And then he came in. I did not mean to say get out. The shop cut her off like a blade. Kayla ran from the house in tears, but Landon did not move. A second later, he smashed his phone against the wall, then slapped himself hard across the face twice. He had no idea what was happening in Hisha, the city he had flown to after several. After several sleepless nights, my body seemed to have reached its limit. I finally managed to sleep straight through until morning without feeling the effects of jet lag. As I descended the stairs, I was met with a chorus of voices shouting happy birthday, with increasing volume from each person. My arms were full of gifts and my heart was full too. After breakfast, unsure of what to do next, I took a stroll to a nearby square and observed a group of children playing with skateboards. The more I watched, the stronger my urge to deal the try became. One of the girls agreed to let me borrow hers. With a rather clumsy attempt, I stepped on the board, pushed too forcefully, and almost tumbled off. Just as I was about to fall, a pair of strong arms caught me securely. Thank you, I gasped. When I glanced up, I was taken aback by the face looking down at me. His East Asian features were evident, but his eyes were a striking pale blue. The contrast was mesmerizing, more striking than any famous celebrity I had ever laid eyes on. Trying to learn how to skateboard? He inquired, tilting his head slightly. Gently nodding with a warm smile that instantly made him approachable, I allowed him to assist me in regaining my balance. With a light flick of his foot, he adjusted the board perfectly before stepping onto it beside me and giving it a gentle push. Under his guidance, the skateboard glided smoothly as I managed to perform two simple tricks to the cheers and clapping of nearby children. When we eventually stopped, my cheeks were flushed with heat from the exhilarating experience. It was the first time I had been so close to a stranger. My awkwardness lingered as I was about to step away, but then my brother approached, teasing us with a grin. "You two look like old pals already, huh? Got along pretty fast there," he joked. Confused, I blinked as the man turned to me, extending his hand with a polite smile. "Logan Hughes, it is a pleasure to meet you." "I hope I didn't leave a bad impression," he said. Miss Stella gazed at the man in front of her, her heartbeat quickening with surprise. This must be Logan, her arranged fiancé. Momentarily frozen, she felt her brother's playful wink from the side, urging her on. Feeling a rush of embarrassment, she quickly extended her hand to shake his. "Hello, Stella." Logan greeted warmly, his demeanor unswayed by the situation. Without missing a beat, he smoothly asked, "So, what would you like to do today for your birthday? Amusement park? Shopping, movie?" His friendly and calm tone helped ease the tension in Stella's shoulders, making her feel more comfortable in his presence. "Anything's fine," she replied softly. After a brief pause, Logan suggested, "All right, then I'll plan the day out. If we do everything, you might be home a little late." Stella blinked in surprise, realizing that Logan had interpreted her vague response as a blank check for decision-making. However, she welcomed the idea of relinquishing control for the day and decided not to correct him. As she proposed a simple day at the amusement park, she never expected her brother to insist His on friends joining them accompanied along him, with a group creating of a unexpected boisterous and companions. restless atmosphere. As soon as we arrived, they swarmed in like a group of noisy tourists, causing chaos akin to a small hurricane passing through the park. In the midst of the commotion, Logan remained by my side, offering unwavering support and ensuring my safety and comfort. I still observed a peculiar pattern. Whenever Logan cast a glance towards his friends, they quickly retreated, as if his mere gaze possessed the power to quiet them. Despite their lively nature, they seemed to behave more appropriately in his presence. After a couple of hours of enjoying games and rides, Logan sensed my waning interest. Wordlessly, he took my hand and led me away from the bustling crowd. As we headed for lunch, we decided to catch a movie. However, our luck took a turn for the worse. A disruptive child seated behind us continuously kicked my seat. Initially, Logan politely turned to the parent and requested them to attend to the child, but the parent merely nodded absent-mindedly and resumed ignoring the situation. Logan's lips curled into a subtle, amused smile. Moments later, he raised his hand and casually waved at no one in particular. Then, without a word, he shifted seats, positioning himself just one chair away from a child. I was taken aback as he began engaging in lively conversation with the empty seat beside him. Although I couldn't hear what he was saying within 5 minutes, the child started crying and sought comfort from his mother, expressing a desire to leave the theater. I tried my hardest to stifle my laughter, but it was futile. I found myself missing parts of the movie due to my efforts to contain my devils. As we exited, Logan adjusted his coat and glanced at my amused expression. "Go ahead and laugh," he said with a playful smile. "Suppressing it will only give you a stomachache." I mouthed a silent legend in response. After a quick stop at the store, the sky had darkened significantly. I assumed Logan would drive me home, but to my surprise, he veered towards the beach. There, my brother and his friends awaited us. DS had arranged a vibrant gathering with a barbecue pit, multiple tents, and people socializing, laughing, and grilling food. The ambience was warm and energizing as the moon rose high above. Fireworks were brought out, lighting up the sky with a brilliant display of sparks and colors. My brother nudged me, suggesting I make a wish. Reflecting on Logan's comment of fireworks being bold and brilliant, closer to the stars than cake, I turned to him with a grateful smile. I closed my eyes and made a wish under the gleaming sky. As the evening came to an end, I declined Logan's offer to drive me home, feeling he deserved to rest after spending the day with me. During the car ride with my brother, I pondered the quiet respect that Logan's friends had shown him. Intrigued, I eventually inquired about it. My brother fell silent for a moment before revealing that Logan had lost his parents at a young age, leaving behind a substantial company and numerous relatives. Transformed into a vulture, Logan was ruthlessly claiming his peace, one by one. Even as a young boy, Logan possessed a sharpness and resilience that matched his frail and aged grandfather, Mr. Hughes, in running the family business. With every passing year, Logan grew even more cunning and unyielding in his decisions. He swiftly crushed any attempt to encroach on what belonged to him, securing a reputation that discouraged others from crossing him. Most guys these days are terrified of him, but not me, I quipped with a smile. I guess I'm the exception. Teasingly, I couldn't help but remark, he probably just keeps you around because you have no shame. Playfully bantering, we continued our lighthearted exchange all the way home until a sudden figure darted in front of our car, prompting my brother to slam on the brakes with a screech. "What in the world?" he exclaimed, unbuckling his seatbelt and charging out of the car in frustration. Stunned from the sudden scare, leaning forward, I peered through the windshield and suddenly froze. In the headlights stood Landon, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Stella," he said softly. My brother stopped, glanced back at me, and gave me a questioning look. However, all I felt was a rush of exhaustion washing over me, as if all the happiness of the day had vanished in an instant. Stepping out of the car, I noticed Landon staggering forward, clearly unsteady on his feet, reaching out as if wanting to embrace me. Before he could come any closer, my brother stepped in between us, firmly blocking his path. "Hey, Landon, right? You show up at our house without even calling. If you really had something to say, you could have waited inside," my brother chided. Ignoring him, Landon's eyes remained fixed on me. They were wide, almost frantic, locked onto mine as he hoarsely whispered, "Stella, I was afraid you wouldn't see me. I didn't dare come in." I gazed at him, feeling puzzled. If he had once treated me like an afterthought, maybe it would have made sense that he felt a hint of guilt or even regret. The purpose of Kayla's return was a mystery to him. She had always been the one he cared deeply for, evident in his eyes. Despite my reluctance, he had flown across the ocean just to track me down. "I do not want to see you," I stated firmly. However, he persisted. "Since you are already here, then say whatever you came to say and leave." Landon's eyes welled up with a single tear at my cold words. "Stella, do not talk to me like this," he pleaded in a whisper. His attempt to evoke memories of our past only served to harden my heart. "That was then," I retorted, "and this is now." Surprised and struggling to comprehend the situation, he stood motionless for a moment. Then, as if attempting to turn back time, he offered me the same warm smile that used to fill our days with joy. "Stella, I understand that you're still angry," he spoke gently, "and I am sorry. That day was my fault. I should never have laid a hand on you, regardless of the circumstances. It was wrong." Pausing briefly, he added, "There is not. Nothing between me and Kayla. Nothing at all. I only see her as a friend now. And if you do not like it, I will cut all contact with her completely." As he spoke, he did not seem to notice my brother's face darkening with fury. Then, without warning, Landon pulled a small red velvet box from his pocket and suddenly dropped to one knee in front of me. "Stella," he said, lifting the lid to reveal a diamond ring. "You used to complain I always gave you the same thing year after year, bracelets with no thought behind them. But I listened this time. I remembered what you liked. I picked the one you always pointed at. Stella, marry me, please." Before I could react, my brother slapped the ring out of his hand with a loud smack. "Landon, you've got to be kidding me," he snapped. "You dared to cheat on my little sister, the girl our whole family spoiled and protected, and then you had the nerve to raise a hand to her. I did not know before, and that was one thing, but now you have the audacity to show up here and propose like nothing. Listen, what happened with G is true, I promise. I am prepared to physically harm you right now." Those were the threatening words uttered by my brother just before he delivered a powerful punch to Landon's face. The impact was immediate, resulting in Landon's eyes swelling up and turning red and bruised. I stood by without intervening, believing that Landon should face the consequences of confronting me. My brother didn't stop at the punch. He also spat at Landon's feet and scornfully remarked, "You think you're worthy of marrying my sister? Look at yourself. You don't even deserve to be in her presence. Let me be clear. My sister's fiancé surpasses you in every way. You don't stand a chance, so stay away. If I catch you near her again, you'll regret it." The mention of my impending marriage seemed to strike a nerve. Landon, who had been passive amid the insults, suddenly froze. His eyes widened in shock as he turned to me and asked, "You're getting married?" I couldn't believe it. Despite my refusal to make our relationship public, you continued to love me and never walked away. "Stella, don't rule your life out of spite. Don't marry someone you don't truly love." His words were not amusing, but rather nonsensical. I gazed at him, a man who once held significance for me, and declared with certainty, "Landon, if there's anyone I don't love in this world, it's you." Since realizing I was merely a replacement and seeing your attic adorned with photos of you and Kayla, you become someone whom I could never love again. As my words settled in, Landon's complexion turned pale. You know about that?" he faltered, his voice shaking. I made to walk away, but Landon reached out, clutching my hand with desperate trembling. "Stella, please stay," he implored, his voice breaking. "Just hear me out. It's not what you think." I let go of Kayla, but since you left, I've come to realize that the one I truly can't part with is you. He appeared completely distressed as he confessed, "You don't understand. When I heard you had moved out and sold the apartment, I was overwhelmed with panic. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I searched high and low, talked to countless people just to get your brother's contact information. Stella, please grant me another opportunity. Let me set things right. I'm pleading with you." I gently pulled my hand away from his, a cold chuckle escaping my lips as a memory surged back. The post he once shared on social media. Meeting his gaze, I uttered firmly, "Landon, nobody waits forever. Nobody except for you, Michaela." His complexion paled and he stood there, struck silent as if all the breath had been knocked out of him. Without a second thought, I linked arms with my brother and began to walk away. As we passed by Landon, my sibling delivered two swift kicks, his pent-up frustration manifesting with each step. When we arrived home, my parents anxiously awaited us at the doorway, their concerned eyes locking with mine, and I could no longer keep it a secret, so I decided to sit down and reveal everything to them. I recounted all the events that had unfolded in Hisha over the years. Upon hearing my confession, my mother enveloped me in a tight embrace, exuding both warmth and sorrow. She didn't say much, but simply held me close, providing comfort for an extended period. Despite my explicit discussion with Landon the previous night, I had hoped he would finally cease bothering me. However, the following morning, he reappeared outside our gate. Logan had also shown up with a bouquet of flowers, only to be confronted by Landon. Soon after, a breathless servant burst in with alarming news. Young Master Logan was engaged in a physical altercation at the gate. We rushed outside frantically. To our surprise, it wasn't really a fight, but rather a one-sided assault. Logan was delivering relentless, precisely targeted blows to Landon. Concerned, my brother exclaimed, "Oh no, Logan is skilled in Muay. Those punches are no joke." Panic-stricken, I bounded forward, fearful that Logan might land himself in serious trouble because of it. Despite my fervent pleas for him to stop, Logan continued unabated. With no other option available, I rushed up behind him and embraced him tightly, causing him to freeze and step back. When I turned to face Landon, I was shocked to see him battered and injured. I immediately called for an ambulance, and paramedics arrived swiftly to take him to the hospital. Later, we discovered the full story from Logan's assistant. Landon had been provoking Logan, who initially tried to ignore him. However, Landon crossed the line by saying hurtful things about me, claiming I was used up and worthless after being with him for 6 years. This finally triggered Logan's outburst, leading him to lose control and physically harm Landon. When I learned the truth, I was deeply moved and struggled to find the right words. That night, I handcrafted a small gift for Logan, and he cherished it by wearing it around his neck like a precious memento. Just 2 days before the wedding, I received a surprising call from Kayla, who dropped her sweet facade and unleashed a tirade of insults at me. "Dear Witch, reveal Landon's hiding place and return him immediately. The fate of his company hangs in the balance because of your curse." Upon learning that Landon was missing, I felt a pang of concern. I quickly informed Logan, who reassured me with a smile, suggesting that the situation may simply be deployed for attention. Bewildered, he questioned why they would resort to such dramatics. Meanwhile, Landon and Kayla found themselves encircled by a group of stern security guards, preventing their departure. Landon, with bloodshot eyes, observed our every move intently. Witnessing our exchange of vows and affectionate kiss before our guests seemed to visibly affect him. As the ceremony concluded, Logan and I approached them, each holding a glass. A glass of champagne sat untouched on the table. Landon's tear-soaked face glistened as he looked up at me, his words slurred and his nose running. "Stella," he cried, questioning if proposing earlier could have prevented their current situation. With a calm smile, I raised my glass toward him and gently remarked, "To you, thank you for never marrying me all these years." Landon's sobs intensified as he broke down completely. Turning my attention to Kayla, I noticed a red mark on her cheek, shocked at the sight. Asking if Landon had hit her, my words were met with a furious outburst from Kayla. She warned me that life has its challenges and bad days would eventually come my way. Feeling the futility of the conversation, I sighed and turned away. A month later, the incident was brought up as dinner gossip by my brother, mentioning how Landon had drowned his sorrows in alcohol after the wedding. After accidentally causing Kayla to lose her baby, Landon refused to marry her, leading to Kayla's descent into a dangerous path of resentment. She began secretly drugging Landon, causing his health to deteriorate rapidly. Eventually, he became paralyzed and lost his ability to speak. The Steele family intervened, leading to Kayla's arrest and imprisonment. Despite their efforts to seek justice, the damage had been done, leaving Landon permanently scarred. Reflecting on the story, I asked Logan if he thought I shared any similarities with Kayla. He responded with certainty, assuring me that our characters were vastly different, offering his reasons why he believed so. Would you mind if I smiled softly and replied, no reason? Because the reality is, when someone truly loves you, they see you as unique and irreplaceable. On the other hand, someone who does not love you will always find reasons to compare you to others. Thank you for tuning into today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, as we value your opinions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more wonderful stories. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.